Widow's Bay Episode 8 may have quietly changed everything we thought we knew about the island. Because after watching this episode, I'm starting to wonder if Richard Warren was ever the curse at all. What if he was just the thing keeping the curse contained? In fact, the more clues I found in this episode, the more it felt like Widow's Bay wasn't ending a cycle, it was starting a new one. So today, I'm breaking down 5 clues you probably missed that may reveal how Widow's Bay actually works. And at the end, we'll talk through some of the biggest questions that I have after watching this episode. But before we get started, let me introduce myself if you're new here. And if you're not new here, then welcome back. My name is Brandi, and I realize that you could be on any channel in the world, but you're right here with me, and I really do appreciate that. So please go ahead and like this video. It really does help the channel out, and I greatly appreciate it. And also subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy watching TV show breakdowns. Now let's start with a clue that happens in the final moments of the episode, the incoming storm. At the very end, Wick shows up at Tom's door with a warning.
It's not over.
And as he says this, we hear thunder and wind beginning to roll across Widow's Bay. Now think about the timing. Richard Warren is dead. Tom and his team seem to think the curse is over, and now the storm suddenly wants to roll in. If Richard Warren was the curse, shouldn't the skies be clearing instead of darkening? And here's why I think this matters. Because in horror and sci-fi stories, storms usually signal a transition, a reckoning, or the arrival of something dangerous. They're often used to tell the audience that a new phase of the story is beginning. And that's exactly what this scene feels like. Not an ending, but a reset. There's a growing theory that Richard's deal with the island didn't destroy the evil. It simply contained it. And if that's true, then Richard's death wasn't a victory. It was the expiration of that contract. Maybe killing Richard didn't end the pact. Maybe it just created a vacancy. And the more I think about it, the more I keep coming back to that conversation between Richard and Tom in episode 7. Now, Richard didn't just tell Tom about the pact. He showed it to him. He opened the pendant, revealed the centuries-old contract, and explained how he signed it because he believed it would save his people. And what's interesting is that the show never let us clearly read what's written on that document. Because looking back, that scene feels less like an explanation and more like a handoff. Almost as if Richard wasn't just sharing the truth with Tom, he was passing the torch. And if this replacement theory is correct, that conversation may have been the moment Tom unknowingly became next in line. And that leads to a very important question. Is this another sign that Tom is being pushed towards the same choice that Richard had to make?
Covenant was offered for my settlement's salvation, and I signed that pact.
And this brings us to clue number 2, the Boston Red Sox tickets and the mention of the Freedom Trail. One of the most overlooked clues in episode 8 isn't just the Red Sox tickets themselves, it's the conversation they spark about Boston and the Freedom Trail between Tom and Evan. At first, it just feels like a celebratory moment. Tom believes Richard is dead, the curse is over, and they could finally start living a normal life. So he finally wants to let Evan experience freedom and leave the island. But I don't think the writers randomly chose Boston because Boston is the home to one of the most famous landmarks in American history, the Freedom Trail. A path that symbolizes independence, liberation, and breaking away from the past. And that's exactly what Tom thinks he's doing. For the first time all season, Tom is making plans that extend beyond Widow's Bay. Now, watching this beautiful moment between Tom and Evan thinking they're free, something occurred to me. Especially when we saw that Tom wants to visit the Freedom Trail, but Evan does not. That little riff got me thinking about how they actually may serve 2 different purposes in this story. If Evan is Richard's last living descendant, then Evan may be the heir to the bloodline, the person the island still has a claim on. But Tom may have a completely different role. Tom is the one that Richard showed the covenant to. Tom is the one learning the truth. In other words, Evan may be the heir, but Tom may be the decision maker. And suddenly, those Red Sox tickets become a lot more interesting. Because while Tom is planning a trip to Boston and a Freedom Trail, the island is definitely pushing him towards a very different path. Not a path to freedom, a path towards the same choice Richard Warren once made, which raises a nightmarish possibility. Everyone is worried about Evan, but this clue reframes Tom as the person being trapped by the island's larger plan as well. What if the real question isn't whether or not Evan can escape Widow's Bay? What if it's whether Tom can escape too? And clue number 3 is the timing of the boogeyman's return. Now, this clue isn't about the boogeyman simply returning, it's about when he returns. Because Richard Warren, he dies, and almost immediately, old horrors start coming back to the surface, and the boogeyman may be the most extreme example of that. Decades ago, this man murdered teenage girls, and he nearly killed Patricia too, and she survived by hiding under a bed. But this time, she wasn't hiding, and I'll talk to you a lot more about Patricia during the question section at the end of this video. But when the town couldn't kill the boogeyman decades ago, they buried his body in the basement, and they poured concrete or cement all over his body. But in episode 8, he's back. And honestly, I think the island is reopening old wounds. Because look at the pattern here. Richard Warren returns, the old covenant returns, family secrets return, and now Patricia's childhood nightmare returns too. And that's not a coincidence, that's a cycle. But there are still things here that just don't add up for me, and I need to walk through them. First, the mask. Was the mask simply hiding the boogeyman's identity, or was it somehow the source of his power? Because the show doesn't make it entirely clear what stopping him actually required. For me, I couldn't tell for certain where Patricia's final shot hit his body. At first, I was for sure that she hit his mask, but then I rewatched the scene and I couldn't tell if the final gunshot was to the mask or was it to his chest? And that ambiguity feels intentional to me. But either way, my biggest question of all is, how did the boogeyman, who has been sealed beneath concrete for decades, get free to come after Patricia? Now, either he broke free on his own, which raises a whole different set of questions about what he actually is, or the thing chasing Patricia wasn't the original boogeyman at all. And honestly, that second option might be scarier. But either way, I don't think the timing of the boogeyman's return was random. I think it was a warning. Because if the island is entering another cycle, the boogeyman may just be the first old wound to reopen. Clue number 4 is the book those mean women were reading at the book club, The Lovely Bones. Now, on the surface, it feels like a random literary reference. But in The Lovely Bones, the main character is murdered and then exists in a kind of in-between realm that is neither the traditional afterlife nor the world of the living. And she watches her family, her friends, and the killer from this intermediate place while struggling to let go and move on. A major theme of the book is that the main character, Susie, remains emotionally connected to the living world and continues influencing events long after everyone believes that she's dead. So the placement of this book makes me think that Evan's mom, maybe she isn't dead, but maybe she isn't fully alive either. Something like the way Richard was buried, but he was still alive, and the boogeyman was buried as well, but he was still alive. I really think that Evan's mom is in some type of in-between place similar to that. And what's also interesting is that Tom seems to be the gatekeeper, the keeper of the letters, the keeper of the story. And it seems like Evan is relying solely on Tom to tell him the story. And I think that Tom may know more than he's actually telling Evan. Because if Evan is really Richard Warren's living descendant, then his mother may have discovered something about the bloodline, the covenant, or the island itself. Maybe something dangerous, something worth hiding. And if that's true, then maybe Tom isn't protecting Evan from the truth about the island. Maybe he's protecting him from the truth about his mother. Clue number 5 is the content of Evan's mother's letters. At first, the letters seem like heartbreaking reminders of a woman who was struggling after her stroke, after her aneurysm. But the more I listened to them, the more I started wondering if the writers are asking us a different question. What if Evan's mother wasn't losing her mind? What if she was learning something she was supposed to know? Now, on the surface, her letters sound delusional, but one of the letters she wrote really caught my attention.
I need your baby hands to get the keys and your little fingers to reach up my nose to pull the scorpion out of my brain.
Now, most viewers are going to hear that and think, okay, that's just evidence of her mental decline. But I don't think that's what the writers are doing here, because scorpion is just too specific. That's how somebody describes something that might have actually got inside of them, something that doesn't belong there. And when she said get the keys, keys to what exactly? Is she telling Evan to unlock something? access something, get her out of somewhere. What's also interesting is that the show keeps returning to Evan's mother. Why? She's been gone for years now, yet the writers continue feeding us pieces of her story. And usually that means that a character still matters. And again, maybe Evan's mother is still around. Maybe she's just in that in-between place similar to Richard and the Boogeyman. The more we learn about Evan's mother, the less convinced I am that her story is over. And the more convinced I become that she knew something the rest of Widow's Bay still doesn't. And I'm also convinced that Tom isn't telling Evan the full story. All throughout this show, we are dealing with unreliable narrators, so it's hard to know what to believe, what to question, and what information to throw away. Now let's move on to the questions I have after watching this episode. First question, was our girl Patricia rehearsing for this moment her entire life? I mean, she absolutely killed it. I cannot say enough how much I enjoyed Patricia in this episode. I mean, whenever there's a Patricia episode, it's like the best episode of Widow's Bay. Similar to episode 4. I really love how Patricia, she knew that she killed the Boogeyman, and I'm saying kill very loosely because I'm not sure if he's actually dead. But I love how she kept the shotgun on him the whole time. She had the shotgun on him in the ambulance. She had the shotgun pointed to his head in the incinerator waiting room. Even when the man was closing the door to the incinerator, she had the shotgun pointed towards the Boogeyman's head. And I love her for that. She was not playing around. But one question I have about the Boogeyman's death, and I'm so glad that Patricia decided to burn his body. But what about the remains that were left behind? I mean, the burnt ashes, it looks like there were metal shards within those remains. Is that normal? I mean, I don't know much about this topic, but I was really wondering what all those metal shards were. Were they just maybe zippers from his clothing? My first thought were that they were bullets, but I'm like, Patricia only shot him twice, so are those bullets? I don't know what those little metal objects were. And my next question involves Tom. Why would he get Evan's hopes up so high so soon? I mean, Richard Warren just died, and you think the curse is over that soon? I mean, as a parent, I would have to wait a certain amount of time before I wanted to take my child off the island, knowing that they may die. And I am so curious to know what is in the basement. You see that when Tom saw Evan with the box of letters from his mom, that he said, oh, you were in the basement. Well, dang, what's in the basement? We really got to get to that basement on the next episode. Evan, you have one job. Evan, if you don't go into the basement on the next episode, I'm really side-eyeing you, because that's the first thing I would do. I need to know the rest of the answers and if they lie in the basement. And lastly, for this episode, I love the reveal that the sheriff's wife is pregnant. And shout out to whoever put that in the comment section down below, because you guys were already theorizing that the wife was pregnant. I just love the conflict that the writers set up with that storyline. I love that the wife has been stashed away hidden. Tom doesn't know that she's pregnant. Nobody knows that she's pregnant. And just to see the race against time, to see if the sheriff can get off the island before Labor Day. But anyway, guys, I could go on and on and on, especially about Patricia. I mean, she was just iconic in this episode. But listen, if you made it this far in the episode, please do me a favor and drop me down a blue heart below and let me know your theories. Let me know any clues I missed. And also let me know what other shows you're watching at this time. As most of you know, I am breaking down season 4 of From. And one of the next shows I will be reviewing is Silo, which returns to Apple TV on July 3rd. So make sure you catch up on Silo. But that's all I have for today, guys. I hope you guys stay safe out there. And until I see you next time, peace.